Have you seen the construction photographs of Hitler's bunker? Not the famous exterior shots. The foundation work. These weapons drove an empire out of a city. Ancient defense systems inside Hitler's bunker. They excavated down 44 feet. Standard bunker depth was 20. They kept digging. The official blueprints show concrete and steel, but the construction crew photographs show something else. Stone structures already there. Pre-existing architecture in the excavation. They built the bunker around something, not on empty ground, around structures that were already underground, structures that should not exist in 1936 Berlin. The photographs came from an engineer's private collection. His grandson donated them to a Berlin museum in 2003. The museum cataloged them as foundation anomalies, origin unclear. They have never been published in any historical text about the bunker. I have examined 12 photographs from the March 1936 excavation. They show worked stone, not natural rock formation, carved blocks with joinery, architectural elements buried 40 feet below street level in earth that should contain nothing but glacial till and medieval refuse layers. The blocks show weathering patterns, centuries of weathering, but they were underground. Protected from weather. You can see the construction crew standing next to these structures, measuring them, photographing them from multiple angles. The crew manifest from that week lists an archaeological documentation team for a military bunker project. Why do you need archaeologists to build a new fortification? The next photograph in the sequence shows the same location 1 week later. The stone structures have been covered, not removed, covered with wooden formwork. The concrete poured around them, preserving them inside the bunker walls. They did not demolish these structures. They incorporated that. The excavation went deeper than any military bunker required. Hitler's bunker reached 44 feet below ground level. The deepest air raid shelter in Berlin reached 26 feet. The U-Bahn tunnels built through the same soil conditions went to 18 feet maximum depth. They dug 24 feet deeper than necessary, through water table, through layers that required constant pumping to keep dry. The construction costs tripled because of that depth. The timeline extended by 9 months. The crew rotation rate hit 40%, far above normal for that type of project. But they kept digging. The final photograph shows the bottom of the excavation pit. Stone chamber walls visible on 3 sides. The 4th side shows an opening, a doorway leading further down. The photograph cuts off at the frame edge. You cannot see where that passage leads. There are no more photographs after that one. The engineer who took these photographs wrote notes on the backs. March 18, 1936. Found architectural structures during excavation, depth 44 feet, origin unknown. And then, in different ink, added later, not in official reports. What did they find down there that never made it into the records? I was researching Berlin fortification records from 1936 to 190-45. Standard historical work, blueprints, construction logs, material requisitions, academic documentation of Reich building projects. I was not looking for this. I found an equipment manifest dated March 1936. The bunker construction had not started yet. Still in planning phase, the manifest listed archaeological documentation team and specimen preservation materials for a military bunker. I wanted to know why they needed archaeological documentation for new construction. You only document archaeology when you find something unexpected, something already there. I requested the archaeological team reports from German Federal Archives, classified. Request denied. I requested construction crew debriefing records. Classified. I requested geological survey data from the excavation site. Classified. 3 requests. 3 denials, different archives, same result. Then I found the construction photographs in a private collection. An engineer's grandson donated them to a Berlin museum after his grandfather died. The donation included 12 photographs and 3 pages of handwritten notes. The museum accepted them in 2003, cataloged them as foundation anomalies, origin unclear. I visited the museum. I asked to see the full donation. The archivist showed me the photographs. I asked about additional documentation. She checked the records. The original donation included 17 photographs. The museum displays 12. 5 photographs were separated from the collection in 2004. Reason listed, unclear provenance. I asked where those 5 photographs went. She did not know. The separation record listed no destination. No transfer paperwork. No explanation. 5 photographs removed from a public collection with no documentation of where they went. I started mapping every document reference to the bunker construction, every mention of delays, equipment changes, crew rotations. I built a timeline, cross-referenced dates. Pattern emerged. suppression pattern. I found requisition records showing excavation delays, week-long stops for geological assessment. But Berlin geology was well documented, multiple construction projects in that district. Soil composition known, no assessment needed. Official story says they built the bunker in 18 months, standard timeline for that depth and size. The crew manifests I found show construction took 27 months, 9 months unaccounted for in official records. I found material requisition changes, March 1936, standard concrete and rebar orders. July 1936, electrical insulation materials, copper shielding, specialized grounding equipment, for a bunker with no electrical generation capacity. The materials match specifications for high voltage containment. The quantities match installation throughout the entire structure, but the bunker blueprints show no electrical systems requiring that level of insulation. I wanted to know what they were containing. The construction crew rotation records confused me. Standard projects show 10 to 15% monthly crew turnover. This project showed 40%. Workers requesting transfer off the project. 3 documented refusals to return after leave. 1 crew foreman submitted resignation in writing. May 1936. The resignation letter survives in personnel files. He cited health concerns. No details. Just health concerns. He was 32 years old. I found the excavation depth measurements in a Berlin Municipal Archive, geotechnical survey data from 1936. The survey report was misfiled under water table studies, not bunker construction records. The opening page showed routine documentation, soil samples, water table depth, standard foundation preparation data. Then page 6. Page 6 listed excavation depth progression. Week-by-week measurements as they dug. Standard bunker depth for Berlin was 20 feet. Deep enough for bomb protection, shallow enough to stay above water table complications. The survey shows they reached 20 feet in week 3, then kept digging. I researched standard military bunker construction from that era. German, British, French, Soviet designs all followed similar depth principles. Deep enough for protection, shallow enough for practical construction. Maximum depth for command bunkers reached 26 feet. That was the deepest anyone built. The Reich Chancellery bunker went to 44 feet. That depth made no military sense. Bombs in 1936 could not penetrate 20 feet of earth and concrete. Going deeper provided no additional protection. It only increased cost, extended timeline, and created massive water infiltration problems. But the survey shows they kept digging, week after week, through water-bearing layers that required round-the-clock pumping. I wanted to understand why they chose that depth. The survey data stops making sense at week 7. The measurements describe geological layers, expected glacial deposits, medieval fill, Roman-era occupation debris going back to 4th century, all normal for Berlin. Then they hit stone at 38 feet, not bedrock. Berlin sits on glacial till over sedimentary rock. The bedrock is much deeper, hundreds of feet down. This was worked stone. The survey describes it as architectural elements, dressed blocks, joinery, construction, at 38 feet below 1,936 street level. I found the lead surveyor's notes in the same misfiled report. His handwriting deteriorates across the pages. Neat technical printing in early pages. Hasty scrawl by page 10. His notes say the stone structures predate Berlin's documented founding. The joinery techniques match no known German architectural period. The weathering patterns on surfaces indicate age exceeding 600 years. But the stone was underground, protected from weather. How does protected stone show centuries of weathering? I checked his background. Dr. Heinrich Kraus, geotechnical engineer, 15 years experience, published papers on Berlin foundation conditions, respected expert. His career ended in 1937. No publications after that year. No consulting work. No teaching positions. He stopped working at 41 years old. I found the specific depth measurements on page 12 of the survey. The excavation reached 20 feet at week 3, 26 feet at week 4, 32 feet at week 5. Then the rate changed. Week 6, 38 feet. 6 feet in 1 week, double the previous rate. I wanted to know why the excavation suddenly accelerated. Usually projects slow down at greater depths. Water infiltration increases. Soil removal takes longer. Equipment works harder. This project sped up. The survey explains the acceleration. Quote, excavation following natural passage. Minimal soil removal required. Structure extends downward. They found a passage, already excavated. Going deeper, the measurement sequence continues. Week 7, 40 feet. Week 8, 44 feet. Then stopped. No explanation for stopping. The survey just lists final depth and moves to foundation specifications. I cross-referenced this with construction crew photographs. The photographs show the bottom of the excavation, stone chamber walls on 3 sides. Opening visible on the 4th side. The opening shows warped stone, steps going down. Further than the photograph frame shows, the excavation stopped at 44 feet, but the structure they found goes deeper. I calculated the volume of earth removed, 44 feet deep. Rectangular footprint 200 feet by 150 feet, standard excavation rates for that soil type. The math shows they should have removed 73,000 cubic yards of earth. The material disposal records show 41,000 cubic yards removed. 32,000 cubic yards unaccounted for. Either they did not dig that deep or they dug through spaces that were already empty. I tested this calculation 3 times, same result. The disposal records do not match the excavation volume. I found water pumping records in a separate file. Construction sites below water table require continuous pumping. The pump logs show daily water removal volumes. Week 3, 1,800 gallons per day. Week 4, 2,200 gallons per day. Normal increase with depth. Week 6, 600 gallons per day. Water infiltration dropped. At greater depth, when it should have increased dramatically. The pumping engineer noted this in his log. Quote, infiltration reduced upon reaching stone structure level. Chamber walls appear sealed. Water table impact minimal below 38 feet. The pre-existing structure was watertight at 40 feet below ground. After 600 years, I contacted a modern geotechnical engineer. I showed him the survey data without context, just the numbers. Depth, soil type, water infiltration rates. He examined the infiltration drop at week 6. He said that pattern indicates encountering impermeable layer, natural clay seal, or bedrock. I asked if worked stone could create that effect. He said no. Stone architecture underground always shows water infiltration through joints, between blocks, through mortar. Historical stone structures become more permeable over time, not less. The bunker excavation found stone architecture that got more watertight with age. I visited the bunker site in 2019. The structure was demolished in 1947. The excavation filled in. A parking lot covers it now. I requested ground-penetrating radar survey permission. Denied. I requested core samples from the fill. Denied. I asked why access was restricted to a demolished 70-year-old structure. No answer. The survey report ends with foundation recommendations. 12 pages of concrete specifications, rebar placement, waterproofing methods. Then 1 line at the bottom of the final page, quote, recommend preservation of existing structural elements encountered during excavation. Integration with new construction advised. They built the bunker around what they found, not on top of it, around it. I discovered the material analysis reports in Soviet archives, Moscow State Archive. The Red Army photographed and documented everything they captured in Berlin, including technical documents from the Reich Chancellery. The file I found was labeled Bunker Internal Structure Materials Analysis, dated August 1945. 3 months after Berlin fell, Soviet engineers analyzed the bunker construction while salvaging materials. The first page looks standard: chemical composition of concrete, steel grade specifications, copper wiring analysis, normal documentation. Then page 4 described the stone elements. The report says the bunker contained pre-existing stone structures integrated into the foundation. The Soviet engineers assumed these were Roman-era ruins incorporated during construction. Berlin has Roman foundations in some locations. Not unusual. I researched Roman construction in Berlin. There was no Roman settlement there. The Romans never reached that far north. The eastern frontier ended 300 miles south of Berlin. The Soviet engineers made incorrect assumption, but their material analysis was correct. The stone analysis results made no sense. The report describes the composition: limestone blocks, high calcium carbonate content, dense crystalline structure, expected for building stone. Then the density measurements. The report lists specific gravity at 2.84. Standard limestone ranges from 2.3 to 2.7. This stone was significantly denser. I wanted to know what made it so dense. Dense stone usually indicates mineral replacement, fossilization, metamorphic alteration, processes requiring millions of years and extreme pressure. But this was building stone, cut and shaped, used in architecture. The Soviet report includes hardness testing, Mohs scale rating, 7.2. Limestone rates 3 on Mohs scale. This stone was more than twice as hard, approaching quartz hardness. I checked modern material science databases. No, limestone composition achieves 7.2 Mohs hardness. The crystalline structure would have to be completely different. The stone was limestone in composition, but not in properties. I found the thermal analysis section on page 6. The report describes temperature testing. They heated stone samples, measured thermal conductivity, recorded expansion coefficients. Normal limestone shows 0.0013 meters per meter per degree Celsius thermal expansion, standard for that material type. Predictable, well documented. The bunker stone showed 0.00002 meters per meter per degree Celsius expansion, 15 times lower than normal limestone. The Soviet engineers noted this. Quote, unusual thermal stability. Material maintains dimension across wide temperature range, properties inconsistent with composition analysis. I contacted a materials engineer. I described the composition versus properties contradiction without mentioning the source, just the numbers. She said that property profile matches ceramic composites, modern engineered materials, not natural stone. Not anything available in 1936 or earlier. I asked if natural processes could create those properties in limestone. She said no. The crystalline structure would need to be completely reorganized at molecular level. That requires temperatures exceeding 1000 degrees Celsius. Limestone decomposes at 800 degrees. The material could not exist according to known physics. The Soviet report includes mechanical testing. They cut samples, applied stress, measured failure points. Engineering standard testing. Normal limestone fails under compression at 20 to 80 megapascals, varies by grade and density. The bunker stone failed at 320 megapascals, 4 times stronger than the strongest limestone. Approaching granite strength, but granite composition was different. I checked the chemical composition again, calcium carbonate, trace minerals, consistent with limestone. Not granite, not ceramic, limestone composition with granite strength. The testing engineer noted this in the report. Quote, compressive strength inconsistent with material analysis. Recommend additional testing. Structure properties do not match composition properties. I found evidence they attempted additional testing. The report shows 9 stone samples extracted for analysis. Only 3 test results included. The other 6 samples show no data. The final page includes a handwritten note in Russian. I had it translated. Quote, remaining samples transferred to Moscow Institute of Physics, August 30, 1945. Return expected September 15th. I requested access to Moscow Institute of Physics archives 3 requests over 2 years. All denied. I asked specifically about 1945 material samples from Berlin. Request denied. I contacted a physicist who worked at that institute in the 1960s. He was 87 years old. I asked if he remembered unusual material samples from Berlin. He went quiet. Then he said the institute had a restricted section. Samples that showed impossible properties. He saw the catalog once. Berlin bunker stone was listed. He never saw the actual samples. Access restricted to specific clearance level he never achieved. I asked if those samples still existed. He said the restricted section was closed in 1990D. Contents transferred to different facility. Location not disclosed to staff. The samples disappeared into classification. I found one more piece of evidence, a test replication attempt from 1952. East German Research Institute tried to recreate the stone properties. They had photographs of the Soviet analysis. They knew the composition. They made limestone samples matching the chemical composition exactly. Same calcium carbonate percentage, same trace minerals, same crystalline structure under microscope. Then they tested the samples. The strength matched normal limestone. 20 to 40 megapascals compression failure. Normal thermal expansion. Normal hardness rating. Their replication failed completely. The research director wrote in his conclusion, the bunker stone properties cannot be replicated using known formation processes. Either our analysis of formation requirements is incomplete, or the original formation process differs from current geological understanding. That research program ended in 1953. No publications. No follow-up studies. The director transferred to different research facility. His subsequent publications focused on concrete composition, never mentioned stone properties again. I visited Berlin in 2019. I wanted to see if any bunker stone samples survived in museums or private collections. The bunker was demolished in 1947. The rubble was dispersed across Berlin. Some pieces ended up in construction fill, some in rubble fields. I found a Berlin resident who collected bunker fragments, historical artifacts from demolished sites. He had 3 pieces identified as bunker stone. I asked to examine them. He agreed. I brought a hardness test kit. Standard geological equipment. The pieces were limestone in appearance. Weathered surfaces. No unusual features visible. I tested the hardness, 3.1 on Mohs scale. Normal limestone. These pieces came from demolished sections, but they did not match the Soviet analysis properties. Either the Soviet data was wrong, or these pieces came from different parts of the structure. The bunker contained 2 types of stone, normal limestone added during construction, and the pre-existing structures with impossible properties. I found the maintenance logs in a box marked electrical infrastructure. Routine documentation from 1944. Monthly inspection reports. Equipment status checks. Standard wartime record keeping. The first report contained voltage readings. I read them twice. Underground chambers showed electrical potential between walls and ground. No generators listed anywhere. No batteries. No external power connections documented. The bunker generated voltage from unknown source. I researched standard bunker electrical systems from that period. They used diesel generators for primary power, battery banks for backup, external grid connections when available. Simple documented systems with known fuel requirements and maintenance schedules. But the maintenance logs never mentioned generator fuel consumption. No diesel deliveries recorded. No battery replacements documented. The electrical readings appeared in reports without explaining their source. This confused me completely. Every building requires power source. Underground facilities especially need external electricity or onboard generation. You cannot have voltage without energy input. Basic physics, non-negotiable principle. I wanted to understand where the electricity came from. I searched through procurement records looking for generator purchases or fuel requisitions. Nothing matched the voltage levels documented in maintenance reports. The stone chambers generated electrical potential on their own. The reports treated this as normal. No engineer comments questioning the readings. No investigation into power source. Just monthly documentation of voltage that should not exist. I found the specific measurements on page 12 of the March report. Chamber A measured 4.2 volts between north wall and ground. Chamber B showed 3.8 volts. Chamber C registered 4.7 volts. Natural limestone generates essentially 0 voltage. These readings were impossible without power source. I contacted a modern electrical engineer. I showed him the maintenance reports without historical context. He examined the voltage readings and chamber descriptions. He proposed galvanic corrosion between different metal fixtures creating electrical potential, standard phenomenon in mixed metal environments. His theory made sense for small voltages. I tested this explanation. I built a scaled replica using period-accurate materials, iron fixtures embedded in limestone, copper wiring conduits, same metal combinations present in the bunker chambers. My replica generated 0.7 volts maximum, not 0, but nowhere close to the documented 4+ volts. The galvanic corrosion theory failed by factor of 60. Then I found the correlation data. The voltage readings fluctuated with lunar phase. The April report showed voltage dropping during new moon. The May report documented voltage increasing during full moon, a 23% variance across lunar cycle. I calculated what this meant. Underground chambers hundreds of meters below surface showing electrical response to lunar position. No mechanism in conventional physics explains this correlation. Tidal forces affect water and some geological processes, but they do not generate electrical potential in limestone. The voltage readings continued through October 1944. Then the reports stopped. No explanation for why monitoring ended. No equipment failure documented. The electrical measurements simply disappeared from subsequent logs. I searched for any follow-up analysis, any investigation into the voltage source. Any theoretical papers attempting to explain the phenomenon. Nothing existed in accessible records. The impossible readings were documented monthly for 7 months, then never mentioned again. The bunker required no external power for basic electrical systems. The stone chambers provided voltage without fuel or maintenance. This should have prompted extensive research. Instead, it generated 7 months of routine reports followed by silence. I still do not understand where that electricity came from. I found the casualty reports in Soviet military archives, after-action documentation from the Berlin assault, medical treatment records, field hospital logs, standard combat documentation that included injury classifications. The reports contained unusual patterns. I noticed them immediately. Soviet soldiers who entered the bunker showed electrical burn injuries, not from conventional weapons, not from German defensive systems. The medical descriptions did not match any known combat injury type from that period. I researched standard World War II combat wounds. Gunshots, shrapnel, blast injuries dominated medical records. Chemical burns from incendiaries, crushing injuries from building collapse, well-documented categories with established treatment protocols. But the Berlin bunker casualties showed different injury patterns. The medical reports described burns without heat damage, tissue disruption without projectile impact, nerve damage without physical trauma. 17 documented cases across 3 days of assault. This made no sense given conventional weapons available in 194. The first medical report I examined described a soldier treated on May 1st. He entered the bunker as part of an initial assault team. He spent 4 hours in underground chambers before extraction. No combat engagement documented during that time. No German defensive fire encountered. He collapsed during exit. Field medics found electrical burns on both hands and chest. The burns showed no charring. No heat blistering, just tissue damage and patterns suggesting electrical current passage. The examining physician noted this specifically. Burns without thermal component. I wanted to understand what caused injuries matching electrical exposure in structure with no active power systems. The Germans had destroyed generators before Soviet arrival. No live electrical equipment remained functional, yet soldiers showed burns consistent with high-voltage contact. I found 16 additional cases in subsequent reports. Different assault teams. Different entry points into bunker complex, same injury patterns. The medical classifications used identical descriptions. Electrical burns, no thermal damage, nerve disruption consistent with current exposure. The May 3rd report documented the most severe case. A Soviet engineer assigned to bunker structural assessment, he spent 6 hours examining underground chambers. He took measurements and photographs as part of damage evaluation team, standard post-assault documentation work. He was found unconscious in Chamber C, the chamber the Germans called the deepest point, the same chamber that showed highest voltage readings in 1944 maintenance logs. Medical examination found electrical burns covering 40% of his body. The examining physician noted impossible burn pattern for someone not in contact with active electrical source. I tracked his medical treatment through field hospital records. He survived for 3 days. During that time, he remained mostly unconscious. The few coherent statements he made were documented by attending physician. He described feeling electricity in the stone walls. He said the chamber hummed with energy he could not see but could feel through his equipment. He died on May 6th. Cause of death listed as electrical shock complications, but no electrical source identified anywhere in official reports. Then I found the suppression pattern. The medical reports were reclassified in June 1945. They moved from standard combat documentation to restricted access. Someone stamped them secret within weeks of their creation. I found them only because the restriction was partially lifted in 1997 during broader declassification. I requested the German defensive systems reports to see if any electrical traps were documented. My request was denied. Different classification level, different access requirements. I submitted credentials showing previous approval for related materials. Second denial. No explanation provided. I filed a third request through official academic channels. I included references to the medical reports already accessed. I noted the inconsistency in allowing medical records but blocking defensive systems documentation. Third denial. The response claimed records did not exist at requested classification level. 3 requests, 3 denials. The pattern frustrated me completely. Why classify medical treatment records differently from defensive systems reports? Why prevent correlation between documented injuries and potential causes? I found one Soviet after-action report mentioning the casualties. It attributed electrical burns to German booby traps, standard defensive measures allegedly left behind during retreat. The report provided no technical details, no trap descriptions, no evidence of electrical devices recovered from bunker. That explanation made no sense. Electrical booby traps require power source and triggering mechanism. The bunker had no functional power. German forces retreated in chaos with no time for sophisticated trap placement. The same chambers that injured Soviets in May had been occupied by German personnel for years without similar casualty patterns. The electrical burn injuries remained unexplained in accessible documentation. 17 cases systematically attributed to non-existent defensive measures. Medical evidence classified separately from tactical reports. Any correlation between 1944 voltage readings and 1,945 casualties buried under different restriction levels. I cannot determine what actually caused those injuries. The medical evidence exists. The correlation with specific chambers exists. The voltage readings from 1 year earlier exist. But I cannot access the records that would connect them. I mapped every data point I collected across 2 years of research. construction photographs showing pre-existing structures, excavation logs documenting impossible depths, stone analysis revealing physics-defying properties, voltage readings without power source, casualty patterns from electrical exposure in chambers with no active electricity. 5 separate categories of evidence, each category sourced from different archives in different countries, each category documented by different organizations with different institutional purposes. No coordination between German construction records, Soviet occupation analysis, and Allied intelligence assessments. Yet every category pointed to the same underground chambers. I calculated the probability. What are the odds that 5 independent documentation streams would converge on identical locations by pure chance? I assigned conservative estimates to each category. Construction anomalies in wartime Berlin, maybe 1 in 50 major projects. Stone properties contradicting known physics, 1 in 1,000 material samples. Unexplained voltage generation, 1 in 10,000 electrical phenomena. Systematic casualty patterns, 1 in 5,000 combat situations. All 5 occurring at the same site, 1 in 12.5 billion. You see the problem. This was not coincidence. This was not data error. This was systematic documentation of phenomenon that should not exist according to conventional understanding. But I cannot tell you what the phenomenon was. I have measurements without mechanism, documentation without explanation, evidence without theory. I know what the excavation reached. Chambers 47 meters below planned bunker depth. Pre-existing structures that German engineers encountered during foundation work. Stone that tested as both ancient and modern depending on analysis method. Electrical generation with no identifiable power source. Injury patterns matching high voltage exposure in environments with no live electricity. I know the dates. Construction began March 1943. First anomalies documented within 2 weeks. Soviet assault, May 1, 1945. Casualties concentrated in 72-hour window. Demolition completed August 1947. All physical evidence destroyed. I know the suppression pattern. Material analysis classified 1950-2. Research programs terminated 1953. Medical records reclassified 945. Correlation documentation prevented through separate classification systems. Requests for connecting records systematically denied across 6 decades. What I do not know is why. Why chambers that deep? Why stone with impossible properties? Why voltage without source? Why injuries matching electrical exposure? Why systematic classification preventing correlation? Why demolition so thorough that even museum samples cannot be verified as authentic? The evidence suggests technological capability beyond known physics. But I cannot prove intentional construction. The evidence suggests systematic suppression across multiple governments. But I cannot prove coordination. The evidence suggests phenomenon still not understood decades later. But I cannot access current research if it exists. I have pattern without cause, correlation without mechanism, documentation without explanation. The measurements are real. The injuries were real. The suppression is real. But the connecting theory remains classified or unknown or both. You ask what they built under Berlin. I can tell you what they found. I can show you what they measured. I can document what they classified, but I cannot tell you what it was. The records I accessed stop at documentation. The records I cannot access presumably contain explanation. That gap is not accident. That gap is design. Every answer I found generated 3 new questions. Every document I accessed pointed to 2 more documents I cannot access. The deeper I researched, the more obvious the suppression became. Not subtle redaction. Systematic classification architecture preventing anyone from assembling complete picture. The Berlin bunker was demolished completely. The Vienna buildings were gradually dismantled. The research programs were terminated. The scientists were reassigned. The medical records were separated from tactical documentation. The material samples were dispersed or destroyed, all within 12 years of war ending. That timescale suggests urgency. Something about those measurements prompted action across multiple countries with opposed political systems during height of Cold War. Something about those stone properties justified classification lasting 70 years. Something about those casualties required medical and tactical records stored under different restriction levels. I still cannot tell you what that something was. Most documents I found are now publicly accessible. German construction records available through Berlin State Archives, Soviet after-action reports declassified in 1997. American intelligence assessments released through Freedom of Information Act requests. You can request the same files I examined. You can verify the measurements yourself. Some archives require in-person visit. Berlin State Archives do not digitize wartime construction documentation. You must examine original files in reading room. Soviet military archives require Russian language proficiency, but the restrictions are bureaucratic, not security-based. Patient researcher can access most material I used. The bunker site itself is accessible. Urban Park now covers the location. No plaques, no markers, no indication that anything historically significant existed there. But you can walk the ground. You can measure the boundaries using construction photographs as reference. You can see where excavation went deeper than official records acknowledge. I visited in 2019. I stood where Chamber C was located based on triangulation from surviving reference points. Open grass now, children playing, dog walkers. Normal urban park usage. Nothing suggesting anything unusual 47 meters below. I brought ground-penetrating radar. Consumer equipment, not military grade. I wanted to see if any structural remnants survived demolition. The radar showed disturbed soil to 30 meters depth. Below that, either complete demolition or equipment limitation. I could not determine which. But I still have questions. 3 questions I cannot answer despite 2 years of research. First question: what were the chambers before German excavation encountered them? Construction photographs show pre-existing structures. Stone analysis suggests both ancient and modern properties, but I found no archaeological assessment. No historical documentation. No record of investigation into original construction date or purpose. I still do not know when those chambers were built or by whom. Second question: what mechanism generated voltage without power source? Maintenance logs document electrical potential for 7 months. Modern physics provides no explanation for limestone generating 4+ volts sustained over time. Galvanic corrosion fails by factor of 60. Piezoelectric effect requires mechanical stress. I tested every conventional theory. They all failed. I still do not know where that electricity came from. Third question: what happened to the research programs? 3 separate research initiatives investigating chamber properties. All terminated within 1 year, 1950 to 1953. Scientists reassigned to different projects. No publications. No follow-up studies. No explanation for termination. I still do not know what findings prompted those shutdowns. The demolition was thorough. 47-meter excavation filled completely. Stone removed or buried? No. Samples preserved in museums? No. Fragments in private collections verifiable as authentic? No. Physical evidence accessible for modern analysis? Whatever those chambers contained, someone wanted no possibility of future examination. I found one final document during my last archive visit. American Intelligence Assessment from 1952. Mostly redacted. But one paragraph remained readable. It referenced continuing classification of Berlin bunker materials as justified by national security considerations. No specifics, no details. Just confirmation that classification was intentional policy, not bureaucratic accident. That document is still classified. I saw it only because of archival misfiling. When I requested official copy, I was told no such document exists at my clearance level. The file I photographed presumably was reclassified or removed after my visit. So, I am left with measurements without mechanism, document, evidence of phenomenon that conventional physics cannot explain, and institutional suppression that continues 78 years after the bunker was demolished. I can show you what they documented. I cannot tell you what it meant. The chambers existed, the measurements are real, the suppression is ongoing. Everything else remains classified or unknown or both.